Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video will be focused on what it is really like to try to find a legal internship. So have you guys ever wondered what it was like to find a legal internship? Well, this video will talk about my experiences of trying to find a legal internship, not once, not twice, but 3 times. So I have quite a bit of information to share. I'll make it short and sweet. But as you could tell, my experience was very fun-filled, to say the least. I have made other law school videos, so if you're interested in that, or the California bar exam, hit the link below. So generally speaking, my experience was really tough, and I learned through my experiences that a lot of lawyers were in the same shoes, so I decided to make this video so law students kind of have a heads up on what it's actually like to try to find a legal internship. So for one, school connections. So your school will probably have quite a bit of connections. There are faculty obviously at your school who are lawyers or used to be lawyers, and they have a broad connection base. So you could have them help you try to find something. But one issue that might arise in this is something that I experienced myself. So I went to law school in North Carolina, but I was born and raised in California. Everything I knew was back home, and that is where I wanted to practice. So my issue became, how could I find an internship if my school was pretty small? It's a pretty small law school. It's based in on the East Coast. It's Elon University, if you ever have heard of it. I never even heard of it until after I was actually looking into law schools to figure out where I was going to apply. And basically, a lot of faculty are like in that area. They're born and raised in that area, they practiced in that area, and so forth. So the connections were pretty much very limited in terms of anything that I could find in California specifically. So the issue became, how was I going to find something for myself? So for many people, it might actually work out, especially if you want to be in an area that is around your school, or maybe your school is huge and has hundreds of connections and stuff. But unfortunately, that was not the case for me specifically. So another point on that is, if you are going to go to law school in an area where you want to practice, it's probably going to be fairly easy to find an internship for yourself. This might come through school connections, faculty, stuff I mentioned already, but a lot of lawyers in the area will probably visit your law school from time to time, maybe for events and stuff like that, so you build connections that way. So it makes it a lot easier to have an internship ahead of time, especially if you're looking for one in summertime. Maybe you jump the gun and get one like months in advance, maybe even like during December or something like that. So it'll be easy for you, and obviously you'll get the first chance since you'll ask before everybody else. Another important thing to note about that is, a lot of lawyers, especially in small firms and sole practitioners, they don't really know what their workload might be like ahead of time, really in advance. And this was one issue I had, where I was asking lawyers very much in advance, and they just did not know whether they would have a workload where there'd be any good reason to bring me in, or whether they could even afford to bring me in, unless I did it for free. But even then, it was a question about whether their workload would be great enough to bring me in, or I would just sit around not doing anything, which would be a waste of everybody's time. Another issue I had with trying to find a legal internship was the competition. So like I said, I live in California. At law school, I was living in North Carolina, but I was looking for an internship in California. The competition was rough, and I assume that a lot of places that are very populated have very tough competition. And this makes applying for existing jobs very difficult, since there's so many law schools out there, so much competition, competing with other students, especially if you go to law school like further away, where the name might be not as known, where you're actually from and trying to get a job. So employers won't know exactly where you go to law school. Maybe they never even heard of the place, and you're competing with students that are closer to where this law firm actually exists. So their schools are actually well known, and maybe these law firms have experience with students that come from these schools. So you're very isolated in a way where you might not have what it takes to even compete with the students, even if you are more experienced or might be more knowledgeable or whatever the case might be. One thing I had to do in search for an internship all 3 times was email endlessly. So I was applying for jobs, and unfortunately the competition was very rough. I live in the Bay, so you have Stanford Law, you have UC Berkeley, you have UCLA, that's more south, but you have students from the Bay Area going to UCLA and obviously coming back during summertime. So the competition is pretty rough. You also have UC Hastings actually, and you might have a situation similar to mine where there are just so many bigger schools in the area where the competition is just through the roof and it's very hard to find something. So the main thing I did personally was not only was I applying to jobs that were on the market, but I was emailing lawyers endlessly, and a lot of them didn't respond. Not surprisingly, they are busy people, so I wasn't necessarily expecting anybody to respond technically, but I was taking this leap of faith. So I was emailing endless lawyers, probably over 100. I think the first time I emailed 101, and I just thought that was a very round number, so I decided to stop. The second time, I think it was around like 50. The third time was around the same, maybe a little less actually. And with the lawyers that did respond, some of them actually gave me tips, like in the email, attach your resume, attach maybe a cover letter, maybe in the email explain who you are a little better, and so forth, to give them idea of who you actually are, not just what you're looking for, which is the internship. And yeah, so I learned tips along the way like that. Yeah, but as you can tell, obviously it took a lot of emails and a lot of time and effort to actually send all these emails and hope for the best. And luckily for me, on all 3 occasions, or 2 of the 3 occasions, I ended up finding something. It worked out great, and I would highly recommend doing it yourself. Don't bombard lawyers, and it's very important not to email the same lawyer twice asking, because then it might get annoying after a while. Maybe if you really want to work at that firm specifically, maybe you could email more than once, maybe twice at most. If it's spread out, don't bug them. It was quite the search. It took a lot of time overall. I applied to continuous jobs because of the competition. I didn't get many responses. Many denials came out of it. Not surprisingly, there were some jobs that I just declined myself because it just didn't seem like a great fit. But at the end, it worked itself out. So I highly recommend using that method. It is tough. I'm sure it's tough for a lot of people. The legal field has a lot of competition. A lot of great students exist. A lot of top schools exist. So for the majority of people, you essentially have to outcompete the people within your own rank to find a job, since a lot of places look at rank of schools and they basically determine from there whether they even want to bring you in or not. So you might actually be cut off automatically if you aren't like a top 10 school or top 25, and obviously most schools are not within that very short list. So it's very important to stay dedicated to this, stay persistent, and you should surely find something. I wish I understood how much work it would take. Obviously by the second time, I did know what it would take, so I was more determined, and I knew that it would take a lot of time and effort. But the first experience, I kind of went in blind. I didn't know exactly what to expect. I was applying to jobs that weren't working out very well. I started emailing lawyers personally in the area, and that was somewhat working, somewhat not. I'd probably say out of 101, maybe only 40 people responded, maybe even at best, maybe 40. But along the way, it was quite the experience. I think the second time was a lot easier. I applied to like half as many places. I had a little bit of experience already built in at that point, and I knew what it would take, so it wasn't discouraging to get no responses or getting responses that essentially said that there was no room for me. Obviously not in a disrespectful way, but they literally did not have any room for me in terms of them not actually looking for anybody because of the workload, the pay, and so forth. There are a lot of sole practitioners out there, so they have a good reason not to hire anybody because they really don't know what the future holds for them in terms of the workload and stuff like that. It is important to note that people's experiences might be different. I went into law school with no legal experience, so it was a bit extra difficult for me. Maybe if you go into law school with some legal experience already, it'll be easier to find an internship. But even then, you have to realize that there probably will be competition depending where you want to practice or find this internship. So that is something to keep in mind. Competition is very rough. You might think you're amazing and can outcompete everybody, but employers look for certain things, and a lot of times, unfortunately, they do look at your school's ranks. So there are thousands, tens of thousands of students that obviously just don't meet the mark of being at a top 10 school, because there's hundreds of law schools in the United States and only 10 can be top 10. So you're already weeded out a lot of time. So competition is very rough. But that being said, you should always keep your head up, keep being persistent, and you'll definitely find something at this point. And even by like the third internship search, I essentially did not even need to find one. I was just looking, I wouldn't say I was looking for fun, but essentially while I was searching, my boss from my second internship offered me a job, and I just took that one, and it's been working out great. So it just goes to show you, as you build experience, it becomes a lot easier. The competition always lives on, but it does get easier for you as you build your way up. At this point, there are people that just reach out to me on LinkedIn and Indeed. Also great places to look for jobs, especially Indeed. But anyways, they reach out to me asking me if I'm interested in these jobs, and now I feel like I'm in a position where I get to be a little more picky. It's not like I have to take whatever that's handed to me, like before, where I was really desperate to find something. But always keep your head up. You'll definitely find something. Thank you guys for watching. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Comment below anything you might have to say, any questions, maybe any video requests. Thank you guys again for watching.